Today we are going to learn about the quadrant rule, and a quadrant rule is a rule that is going to help us solve trigonometric equations without using these graphs. I have the graph of sine function, cosine function and tangent function. And what the quadrant rule is that first we draw a cross like this, and over here I have the angle of 0 degrees. Over here I have the angle 90 degrees because anti-clockwise is measured positive. And this is 180 degrees, this is 270 degrees, and back over here 360 degrees. And this space over here from 0 to 90 degrees is called the first quadrant. If I write over here first quadrant. Similarly, this space over here from 90 to 180 degrees is called the second quadrant, and so on the third quadrant here, and over here the fourth quadrant. Now the first quadrant is from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, and if on my graph if I look from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, remember 90 degrees pi upon 2, so this is this space over here, and in this space of 0 degrees to 90 degrees all of my trigonometric functions are in the positive range. This is my sine function, this is positive, this is my tangent function over here, and this is my cosine function in orange. All of them in the range from 0 degrees to 90 degrees are in the positive range. So I'll write this information over here: sine, cosine and tangent all are positive. And for the next quadrant, if I look from the range of 90 degrees to 180 degrees, this is 90 degrees and this is 180 degrees. In my range of 90 degrees to 180 degrees, there is only one function that is in the positive range, and that is the sine function. The cosine function in this range is negative and the tan function is also negative. So I will write over here only the sine function is positive. Next, in my range of 180 degrees to 270 degrees, the sine function is also negative and the cosine function is also negative, but the tangent function is positive in this range from 180 degrees to 270 degrees. So over here I will write the tangent function is positive. And lastly, in my range of 270 degrees to 360 degrees, the sine function and the tangent function are both negative, but the cosine function is in the positive range. So in my fourth quadrant, I will write that the cosine function is positive. Now I have looked at the angles on the right side of the y-axis, means I have looked at the positive angles. But what happens when we move on to the left hand side of the y-axis for the negative angles? Well, over here let's look at the negative angles. Remember, negative angles are always measured clockwise. So from 0 degrees, if I move clockwise, as I move from 0 degrees to over here, this would be minus 90 degrees. Similarly, this would be minus 180 degrees and this would be minus 270 degrees, and back over here I would get minus 360 degrees. This is for when I measure the angles in the clockwise direction. So as I move from 0 degrees to minus 90 degrees, you can see that only one function is positive, and that is this cosine function. And in my quadrant rule, I have named that the fourth quadrant is cosine, because if I measure the angles in the clockwise direction, the first quadrant that I will encounter is the fourth quadrant. And similarly, if I move from minus 90 degrees to minus 180 degrees, the only positive trigonometric function is this tangent function. And the same is over here, from minus 90 to minus 180 degrees, only tangent function is positive. And from minus 180 to minus 270, only the sine function is positive, and I've written the same over here, only sine is positive. And from minus 270 to minus 360 degrees, you can see that all trigonometric functions are positive. And minus 270 to minus 360 degrees is the first quadrant, and all trigonometric functions are positive over here. So for any angle, positive or negative, the quadrant rule applies. And to remember this quadrant rule, I use a notation called ASTC. A stands for the first quadrant. In the first quadrant, all trigonometric functions are positive. In the second quadrant, only the sine function is positive, so there's a S over here. And in the third quadrant, only the tangent is positive, so I've written a T over here. And in the fourth quadrant, only the cosine is positive, so I've written a C over here. Some people also like to call this as the cast rule, because C is over here, A is over here, S is over here, and T is over here. But I don't like to use this rule because some people mistakenly write a C over here. So it's better to remember this as ASTC. And if you want a rhyme to remember it, you can use this: add sugar to coffee. From add you get a, from sugar you get a S, and from to you get a T, and from coffee you get a C. So you get a ASTC. So in summary, what we've got over here is this quadrant diagram, and in the upcoming videos, we'll be learning how to use this quadrant diagram to solve trigonometric equations.